Sometimes the silence of betrayal is louder than any scandal. Picture this: a grand ballroom awash in glittering chandeliers, tuxedos, and diamonds. A pregnant woman, doing her best to maintain a brave smile, stands quietly at the edge of the room while whispers swirl around her like a hungry tide. Suddenly, the mistress appears, tall, stunning, radiating confidence, and locks eyes with her target. With a sneer and a voice loud enough to carry, she mocks the woman's growing belly and delicate situation. The air is instantly thick with gasps. Everyone expects the tech magnate husband to defend his wife. Instead, silence takes hold, until the pregnant woman makes a move no one could have anticipated. What happens next will become one of the most unforgettable public scenes anyone has ever witnessed. 4 years before that dramatic charity gala, entrepreneur Marcus Ethan Wexler, founder of Wexler Innovations and heir to a Silicon Valley fortune, had married Emily Rhodes in a lavish private ceremony at Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. Marcus, known for his calm demeanor and impeccable taste, had assumed control of Wexler Innovations following his father's passing. Emily, once a promising art curator from Portland, found herself swept into a modern-day fairy tale the moment she accepted Marcus's proposal. The wedding, rumored to have cost nearly $2 million, was the buzz of the year. Nothing was spared. The bride's gown was custom-made in Milan. The guest list included elite names like Tim Cook, Sheryl Sandberg, and Jeff Bezos, longtime colleagues of Marcus's late father. The media frenzy was relentless. Emily's hesitant smiles in the wedding photos were brushed off as normal bridal nerves. Still, a few close friends had their doubts. Emily had walked away from a thriving gallery career in Portland to join the whirlwind of elite San Francisco society. In private, they weren't the flawless couple the lifestyle magazines portrayed. Marcus was always working. Business followed him home. Calls at midnight, weekend board meetings, constant travel. There were also quiet rumors that behind his composed exterior, Marcus could be controlling, emotionally distant, and rarely affectionate in ways a husband should be. Yet from the outside, they looked untouchable. With Emily's talent for style and Marcus's sharp business mind, they quickly rose to prominence as the philanthropic it couple, appearing at every major fundraiser, gala, and tech-backed benefit in the Bay Area. Their love story seemed like a dream, but even dreams can carry darkness. After the wedding, Emily was swiftly folded into Marcus's powerful philanthropic network. The Wexler name had backed hospitals, scholarship funds, and tech museums for more than 50 years. Marcus's father, the late Everett Wexler, had built not only a software empire but also a legacy of charitable giving. Marcus was determined to carry it forward, not so much from heartfelt altruism, Emily suspected, but to honor his father's memory. Over time, the endless stream of high-society fundraisers and exclusive galas began wearing Emily down. She was expected to navigate conversations with ease, host elaborate dinner parties, and design stunning penthouses for donor gatherings, sometimes with just a few days' notice. And if anything went awry, Marcus's disapproval was unmistakable. He never raised his voice, but one cold stare or a silent, tense ride home could make Emily feel like she was constantly one misstep away from disaster. Still, she endured it all quietly. Each morning she woke up with a knot in her stomach, unsure whether the day would bring another subtle look of disappointment or another silent dinner. She had never imagined marriage could feel so lonely in a room full of people. Her identity, once rooted in creative passion and ambition, now felt eroded, replaced with the unspoken expectation to smile, host, and never falter. Part of her held on to the hope that once the hectic pace of their life slowed, Marcus would open up to her more. After all, she had married him out of a mix of love, admiration, and a desire to make him proud. Behind closed doors, Marcus did show fleeting moments of warmth, praising her event coordination, offering a small smile, patting her shoulder, or surprising her with a delicate piece of jewelry after a successful fundraiser. Those rare gestures were enough to keep Emily clinging to hope. But deep down, a quiet ache grew stronger, one born not of heartbreak, but of invisibility. She wondered if Marcus saw her anymore as a partner, or simply a well-dressed extension of his brand. The thought haunted her, yet she dared not voice it. It was at one of those events, a gala supporting foster youth programs in the Bay Area, that Emily first encountered Arias Sterling, an emerging socialite with a trust fund said to come from an old Montana mining fortune. Aria was tall, dark-haired, and glided through the room in stilettos better suited for Fashion Week than philanthropy. Marcus noticed her from across the ballroom. At first, Emily dismissed it. Marcus had to maintain appearances with major donors or their heirs. It was part of his role. But soon, quiet whispers started circulating. Friends in Emily's social circle reported seeing Marcus and Aria together more than once, tucked away in the same corner booth of a private lounge, without Emily. Staff at the Wexler Foundation began mentioning that Aria had become a regular volunteer, often pulling late nights at the office that just happened to overlap with Marcus's schedule. Emily tried to tamp down her growing concerns. After all, Aria was active in the same charity circles as everyone else. But at dinners, the way Aria leaned just a bit too close to Marcus, her laughter too loud at his jokes, it made Emily's skin crawl. She eventually confided in her closest friend, Sabrina Nguyen, a sharp-minded lawyer who had known Emily since their days at Berkeley. "Don't brush off your gut feeling," Sabrina warned one afternoon over tea in Emily's rooftop garden. "If he's stepping out, you need proof. You need to be ready." Emily hesitated. She didn't want to believe it could be true. She still clung to the hope that her husband loved her. So she ignored the small alarms in her head and forced a smile at every function, even when it grew harder each time Aria floated into the room. Behind that practiced smile, however, was a growing fear that she was being slowly erased from her own marriage. That love, once felt deeply, had been replaced by public appearances and private distance. Then, one crisp autumn morning, Emily's world tilted off its axis. She found out she was pregnant. The nausea, the exhaustion, she'd blamed it on work and stress. A quick trip to the pharmacy changed everything. After a second test confirmed it, she decided to share the news with Marcus in a thoughtful way. She arranged soft candlelight and placed a tiny pair of baby shoes in their living room, hoping to catch him during a rare quiet moment. Marcus's reaction was restrained. He gave a polite smile, said something about surprising timing, and asked whether they should schedule a doctor's visit immediately. Emily felt a deep pang of disappointment. She had hoped for an embrace, happy tears, at the very least, a kiss. Instead, she got logistical questions, as if he were preparing for a corporate acquisition rather than fatherhood. Her hands, which had so carefully arranged those shoes just hours earlier, now trembled in her lap. She blinked away tears before they could fall, swallowing the lump rising in her throat. Still, Emily's happiness wasn't diminished. She remained determined to stay hopeful, believing the baby might bring them closer. Perhaps, she thought, fatherhood would bring out the warmth Marcus so rarely displayed. True to form, Marcus made sure all the appointments were arranged. He went with her to each one, asked about vitamins, her meals, and even hired a private chef to manage her nutrition. On the surface, it all looked like concern. But to Emily, it felt too structured, like someone checking items off a to-do list. The warmth she longed for was missing. The gentle touch, the spontaneous questions about how she was feeling, beyond the medical checklists. Every smile he gave felt measured, every compliment rehearsed. Sometimes she wondered if he was doing all this for her, or for the optics. He never asked how she was coping emotionally, what she felt about the changes in her body, or her hopes and fears. One night, while Emily was curled in bed scrolling through pregnancy blogs on her tablet, she heard Marcus's voice floating through the hallway. He was on the phone. She strained to hear. "Don't worry," he said quietly. "We'll talk in the office tomorrow." His voice was soft, almost affectionate, but he never said a name. Emily's pulse quickened. She didn't confront him. Something deep inside told her the truth would reveal itself soon enough. Sometimes, illusions are easier to live with than hard truths. By her second trimester, Aria's presence became unavoidable. She appeared everywhere, on social media, in tabloid spreads, frequently attending society functions where Emily was notably absent. A mutual friend casually mentioned that Aria had been appointed as a special advisor to the Wexler Foundation's new sustainability initiative. Emily had never even heard of such a role. More suspiciously, Aria and Marcus were photographed by gossip sites having coffee outside a boutique hotel. The emotional strain pushed Emily to tears at odd times, sometimes in the shower, sometimes in the back of a rideshare. There were mornings when she stared at her reflection, trying to recognize the woman looking back. Still, she tried to hold on to her dignity and rationalized it all. Maybe Arya was just another socialite trying to attach herself to a man with power. Marcus reassured Emily that Arya's father, Quentin Sterling, was a major donor, and Arya's involvement was merely part of a bigger philanthropic project. Emily, desperate to hold her marriage together and protect their unborn child, tried to believe him. But the weight of betrayal never fully left her. As her pregnancy progressed, Emily started to notice small changes in Marcus. He returned home later and later with increasingly vague explanations. Business dinners, sudden weekend trips, and unscheduled work events became frequent. Meanwhile, Emily drifted further into solitude, filling her days with prenatal yoga, parenting books, and planning the nursery in their luxury penthouse, all by herself. One afternoon, driven by instinct, she began searching Marcus's study. In one drawer, she found a receipt from Tiffany & Co. A bracelet, expensive and purchased just before Valentine's Day. She never received any such gift. Later, she found a key card to a suite at the Ritz-Carlton. Panic surged in her chest as she realized the date aligned perfectly with one of Marcus's supposed out-of-town tech conferences. Her throat tightened and the room spun slightly. How could the truth feel this sharp, this sudden? Grief-stricken and shaken, Emily confronted him that same evening. Marcus looked at her steadily and claimed it was all a misunderstanding. The bracelet, he said, was for a long-time donor, an older woman he was trying to charm into backing a large foundation grant. As for the suite, it had allegedly been arranged for a visiting investor. Emily could tell the explanation was weak, but without concrete proof, she had no way to refute it. A hollowness opened in her chest, the kind that no reassurance could fill. Every word from Marcus sounded like glass, fragile, cold, and already broken. Exhausted and brokenhearted, she turned once again to her trusted friend, Sabrina. They met in Sabrina's law office, far from the high-rise walls of the Wexler penthouse. Sabrina didn't sugarcoat it. "You need to protect yourself and your baby," she said. "If he's cheating, you need a plan." Sabrina outlined a course of action. If Emily could gather undeniable proof of Marcus's affair, it would significantly strengthen her position in a potential divorce, especially critical if she wanted to secure her child's future. But the word divorce made Emily recoil. "I'm pregnant," she said, eyes welling up. "I can't just walk away." "Sometimes letting go," Sabrina said softly, "is the most powerful thing you can do. Just be ready." A few weeks later, Emily received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end, quiet and shaky, introduced herself as Denise Huang, an administrative assistant at the Wexler Foundation. Denise was nervous and hesitant at first, but she insisted she had something Emily needed to know. They arranged to meet at a tucked-away cafe in the Mission District, nowhere near the polished haunts of Silicon Valley's elite. Over chamomile tea, Denise shared her burden. She had come across questionable emails between Marcus and Arya, messages layered with affection, with references to weekends away and hidden rendezvous. Denise had overheard phone calls too, ones in which Arya casually called Emily the clueless wife. The worst part? Arya would say things like, "I can't wait until the baby's born so we can hand it to a nanny and finally have some real fun." Denise's voice quivered with emotion. "I know how it feels to be invisible," she whispered. "I just couldn't sit by and watch you be lied to." Emily's hands gripped her cup. Her pulse pounded. It was no longer conjecture. Marcus was having an affair. And Arya wasn't just complicit, she was callous, mocking, even speaking cruelly of Emily's unborn child. A part of Emily shattered in that moment, but another part, fierce and maternal, rose with quiet fury. It wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about dignity, about protection. Fired up with Denise's revelations, something inside Emily solidified. She wasn't the starry-eyed art curator from Portland anymore. Nor was she the silent wife attending events by Marcus's side. She was a mother now, with someone to protect. She finally acted on Sabrina's earlier advice and hired a private investigator. Her name was Helena Moss. Experienced, discreet, and well-known for managing high-profile cases with surgical precision. Within days, Helena confirmed everything. Marcus and Arya had been renting a luxurious loft on the edge of Pacific Heights for their secret meetups. Helena provided dates, photos, recorded calls, every damning detail. It was enough to destroy Emily. Yet she didn't crumble. Not fully, not anymore. A strange calm set in, edged with purpose, the kind of calm that comes when the truth replaces doubt. But amid the heartbreak, she felt something else, clarity. She no longer needed to play pretend. She had facts, she had power, and most of all, she had the will to protect her baby. What came next was strategy. How to confront Marcus in a way that would leave no space for denial, no opportunity for him to twist the narrative or damage her name. She needed to do it in public, where Marcus's meticulously crafted reputation would backfire. As luck would have it, the Wexler Foundation's annual winter benefit was just weeks away. It was always a glittering occasion, drawing top names from the worlds of tech, politics, and entertainment. Media coverage was intense. Cameras rolled the moment guests stepped out of their black cars and onto the red carpet. Emily usually dreaded such events, but this time she saw it as a perfect opportunity. She reached out to Sabrina and quietly set a plan into motion. If Marcus was bold enough to parade his mistress, even with subtle cues, then Emily would make sure the truth came to light. And if Arya dared to belittle her, even while she was pregnant, Emily would respond with poise and precision, striking back where it hurt most. In the days that followed, Emily worked behind the scenes. Sabrina's legal team finalized the divorce papers with Marcus's infidelity as the cause. Emily also prepared a separate envelope filled with irrefutable evidence, photos, transcripts, receipts. The final stroke, how and where he would be served. Center stage, under the brightest spotlight possible. On the night of the winter benefit, the ballroom of the Lancaster Pavilion was transformed into a glistening winter wonderland. Strings of icy white lights hung from the ceiling. Sculpted ice towers shimmered in the reception hall, and snow-white floral arrangements lined the tables. Guests arrived in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, smiling for the press. Now nearly 6 months pregnant, Emily walked in alone, wearing a custom midnight blue gown that embraced her bump with understated grace. Marcus arrived separately in a black sedan, with Arya in tow. Though they didn't walk the carpet together, insiders knew what their relationship was. Arya wore a silver silk gown that dipped dramatically at the back, capturing the attention of every photographer she passed. The smirk she gave the cameras made it clear she was enjoying her spotlight. Emily remained serene, greeting fellow patrons and old acquaintances with a calm grace. She noticed Arya watching her from across the room, but refused to look back. This wasn't about spite. It was about execution, and the night had just begun. When the program started, Marcus took the stage to deliver opening remarks for the Wexler Foundation. He thanked donors, praised the staff, and introduced a new tech-based housing initiative, something Arya had likely been involved with behind the scenes. He stood tall, self-assured, earning polite applause. The tension in the room simmered. Emily sat near the front, spine straight, chin raised. Arya, brazen as ever, sat just 2 seats away. During the intermission, Arya strolled over with a champagne flute, lowering her voice to a whisper only Emily could hear. "You really ought to stick to water in your condition," she said with mock sweetness. "Or is the baby your only stake in the Wexler name now?" Emily's chest tightened, but her voice stayed soft and steady. "I'm perfectly fine," she replied, "and so is my child." Arya let out a haughty chuckle. "We'll see how long that lasts." She drifted away, leaving Emily flushed with fury. But she didn't react. Not yet. Bigger things were in motion. The real show began when Arya took the stage to introduce a special musical performance, newly titled Director of Donor Engagement. Standing beside a string quartet, she praised the Foundation's mission while slipping in thinly veiled barbs at so-called traditional families who struggled with keeping up appearances. Her tone was layered with implication. Some in the crowd raised their eyebrows. Others whispered behind glasses of wine. The message wasn't lost on everyone. Some thought she was merely speaking in vague philanthropic terms. But to Emily, every word was a blade. Her cheeks flushed, her pulse raced. She spotted Marcus along the sidelines, arms folded, his face unreadable. Was that amusement or apprehension? The mistress was mocking the pregnant wife in front of a packed room, behaving as though she had the moral high ground. But Arya had no idea what Emily had planned. After Arya's speech, guests returned to mingling. Major donors clustered around Marcus to discuss tech initiatives, while Arya basked in the glow of attention, relishing her moment. Emily's hand gently rested on her belly. She drew in a slow breath, steadying herself. Sabrina, seated at a discreet table near the back, locked eyes with Emily and gave a subtle nod. It was time. The master of ceremonies took the mic and announced a surprise presentation. A few words from Emily Rhodes Wexler. The crowd clapped politely, curiosity piqued. Emily walked calmly to the stage, microphone in hand. The spotlight found her, highlighting the faint tremble in her arms, but when she spoke, her voice was steady and clear. She began by thanking the guests, expressing gratitude for the Wexler family's philanthropic mission. Her words, laced with quiet grace, stood in stark contrast to Arya's smug performance earlier. Then, with a breath that seemed to pull from the very core of her resolve, Emily said, "I'd like to invite my husband, Marcus Wexler, to join me on stage for a brief announcement." There was scattered applause. Marcus rose, walking to the stage, his face composed, unreadable. Arya stayed off to the side, arms crossed, lips taut. She had no inkling what was coming. As Marcus stood beside her, Emily turned to the crowd with a soft, poised smile. "Marcus and I have supported many charitable projects together these past months, or at least, that's how it might have seemed." The room fell silent. The cameras were rolling, every moment recorded. "But tonight," Emily continued, "I need to speak a truth that weighs heavily on me. I stand here not only as Marcus's wife, but as the mother of his unborn child. And while I believed we were building a life together, the truth reveals something far different. Betrayal, deception, and deep dishonor." Gasps rippled through the audience. Heads turned. At the edge of the ballroom, Arya blanched. With solemn poise, Emily produced a manila envelope and held it aloft. "I regret to inform you, and all of our esteemed guests, that I am filing for divorce." She handed the envelope to Marcus, who froze in place, his expression faltering. A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd like thunder before a storm. "This envelope contains documented proof of Marcus Wexler's affair with Arya Sterling," Emily announced. At the mention of Arya's name, every camera turned in her direction, catching her wide-eyed look of horror. "There are photographs, receipts, recorded conversations, and much more. I think it will be more than enough to explain my decision." The room gasped as one. Marcus's jaw tightened. Arya looked like she might collapse, but Emily stood tall, tears in her eyes, yes, but strength in her voice. "I will not be humiliated," she said, "and I will not allow my child to be raised in a home built on lies. This ends now." The ballroom erupted. Some guests tried to hide their astonishment. Others gossiped openly. Cameras stayed fixed on Arya, who stormed forward and grabbed Marcus by the arm, her expression twisting with rage. "You said you'd take care of this," she hissed, her words caught by a nearby microphone. Marcus, flustered and sweating, turned to the stunned audience. "Everyone, please, this is a misunderstanding." He began to speak, but Emily turned to him, with a gaze sharp enough to cut glass. "There is no misunderstanding," she said firmly. "Not when there are hotel receipts, emails, and photographs. If you want to keep lying, save it for court." Security personnel lingered at the edge of the stage, unsure whether to step in. Marcus gave them a brief signal to stand down. But Arya, desperate to reclaim control, lunged for the microphone. "This is slander," she screamed, her eyes blazing. "You're just a jealous, hormonal mess who couldn't—" She never got to finish. The microphone went silent, cut by a quick-thinking sound technician. Her voice was lost to the crowd, her fury rendered mute. In that moment, Emily felt the baby kick, as if her child, her reason, was standing by her side. She closed her eyes, drew in a cool breath of air from the ballroom, and began her descent from the stage. The final image captured by the press that night was one of Emily, hand on her belly, walking with unmatched grace, while Marcus and Arya stood frozen in the harsh glare of scandal. By night's end, the benefit had been eclipsed by one headline: "Pregnant wife serves divorce papers to Marcus Wexler amid affair scandal." Social media exploded. Tabloids couldn't print fast enough. Paparazzi swarmed outside the Lancaster Pavilion, eager to catch a shot or grab a quote. Emily, escorted by Sabrina, slid into a waiting black car and sped away from the chaos. Inside the car, her hands trembled. The emotional cost of the confrontation weighed heavily on her. Sabrina placed a calming hand on her shoulder. "You did what you had to do," she said softly. Now let the lawyers take it from here. Marcus called multiple times that night. Emily didn't answer. Aria, too, sent a flurry of messages, which Emily refused to open. For the first time in months, Emily felt a quiet freedom, free from performance, free from lies. Her future was still uncertain, but she was no longer imprisoned in a marriage built on deceit. By sunrise, the internet was ablaze. Every major news outlet ran the story. Hashtags like Wexler scandal and Mistress mockery trended across platforms. Unexpectedly, public sympathy poured in for Emily. Her composure, especially given her pregnancy, struck a chord. News anchors and commentators who once praised Marcus as a visionary now condemned his hypocrisy. Aria's social media accounts were bombarded with scorn, accused of destroying a marriage, of cruelty toward a pregnant woman. Even celebrities weighed in. Talk show host Wendy Williams didn't mince words. If you're bold enough to flaunt an affair, be bold enough to face the fire. In philanthropic circles, Aria's name became radioactive. Rumors surfaced that her father, Quentin Sterling, was livid, concerned that her recklessness might smear their family legacy. The next morning, Marcus appeared at Emily's penthouse, uninvited. The doorman tried to stop him, but he pushed through. Emily, wearing a soft robe, her belly visible beneath the fabric, met him in the living room. Sabrina was already there, arms folded, ready if needed. Marcus looked haggard, bloodshot eyes, hair disheveled. "You ambushed me," he hissed, voice shaking with fury. "At a charity event, in front of everyone. You humiliated me." Emily didn't flinch. "I told the truth," she said calmly. "You humiliated yourself." "The moment you took Aria to bed," Emily began. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "We could have handled this privately. The donors are furious. The board is calling for my resignation." "Consequences of your actions," Emily interjected sharply. "I owe you no sympathy." Marcus tried to pivot, his tone shifting to pleading. He promised the affair was over, that he'd be a real father to their child. But the words were empty. Emily looked at him, her eyes brimming with tears. All she could see were the sleepless nights, the whispered phone calls, and Aria's cruel taunts. The weight of months spent pretending everything was fine now came crashing down, a silent scream building in her chest. Her body ached not just from pregnancy, but from the emotional erosion of betrayal. She shook her head. "I'm done," she said. "If you truly want to be a father, you'll do so on the terms I set, through my legal team." With those words, she turned and walked away, leaving Marcus in stunned silence. Sabrina followed him to the door and quietly ushered him out. Once alone, Emily returned to her bedroom and finally let go. The tears came in waves. She mourned the life she thought she had, the love she once believed in, and the father her child might never fully know. She sobbed into her pillow, clinging to the only thing that felt real now, the life stirring inside her. Yet beneath the sorrow burned something stronger. Resolve. She swore to shield her baby from manipulation. If Marcus wanted to be part of their child's life, it would be on her terms, not his. And as for Aria, Emily hoped that Marcus would one day recognize the vast difference between temporary infatuation and lasting partnership. But she no longer cared to see it happen. In the following weeks, Sabrina and her legal team fought fiercely over the divorce terms. Marcus resisted, especially Emily's demand for sole physical custody. He argued that the baby was his too, that he had a right to be there. But Emily's attorneys countered with evidence of his erratic behavior and documented infidelity, making a case for supervised involvement until he proved his commitment. Each court date, each negotiation drained her, but she endured with quiet strength. She wasn't fighting for revenge, she was fighting for her child's peace of mind. Meanwhile, Aria disappeared from public view. Whispers circulated that her father, Quentin Sterling, had cut off her trust fund and scolded her for disgracing their family name. Some said she was in Europe. Others claimed she'd checked into a private clinic in California for emotional recovery. Emily didn't care. Aria's fate no longer mattered. The winter that year was bitterly cold. The snow outside seemed to mirror the uncertainty in Emily's world. And yet, in the midst of the chaos, she found solace preparing for her baby's arrival. She spent quiet afternoons organizing the nursery, folding tiny clothes, researching car seats, and devouring parenting books. Each little task gave her hope, a reason to smile. She also began easing back into interior design, taking on select projects for close friends. It rekindled her creative spark and reminded her of the Emily who had existed before the Wexler name, before the scandal. Sometimes she wondered whether going public had been the right decision, whether she could have handled it differently. But whenever doubt crept in, she remembered Arya's smug grin and Marcus's cold silence. The truth had to be spoken. In an attempt to salvage his image and that of the Wexler Foundation, Marcus later held a press conference at headquarters. Standing at a podium, he read from a prepared statement, apologizing to anyone hurt by my personal decisions. He specifically expressed regret for failing as a husband. He announced his intention to remain on the board, but said he would step back from daily operations for personal reasons. Reactions were mixed. Some praised him for owning up. Others condemned the apology as too little, too late. Emily saw a clip on the morning news. She noticed how carefully chosen the words were, measured, polished, and she felt nothing at all. Not once did he say Arya's name, nor did he mention the baby directly. Emily found the apology lacking sincerity. Still, public pressure had finally forced Marcus to admit some fault, a small yet important victory in Emily's eyes. As she entered her 7th month of pregnancy, Emily's emotions swung like a pendulum. She lit up at every tiny kick, every shift of her growing child. But nights remained restless, haunted by worry. Could she raise this child alone? Could she provide the love and stability he or she would need? Financial security was there, yes, but money couldn't replace presence or warmth. Sometimes, dreams of Marcus still disturbed her sleep. She'd remember the early days, their long walks in Sausalito, quiet dinners in low-lit bistros, inside jokes that once made her laugh without thinking. She questioned whether she'd imagined the connection, or if it was real and simply withered from neglect. But even those good memories couldn't undo the betrayal. The man who once sent her wildflowers had also lied and broken her trust. At night, when the world was silent and her mind was loud, she battled the ache of losing a future she thought was theirs. She mourned not just a husband, but the home she had believed she was building. Loneliness began to hang over her like a fog. Taking Sabrina's advice, Emily joined a prenatal support group. Weekly meetings brought her into a circle of other expectant mothers, some single, some navigating rocky relationships, others beaming with happiness. Surprisingly, hearing their stories comforted her. Heartbreak, she realized, didn't discriminate. It didn't care about zip codes or family names. Around mugs of herbal tea, she let herself cry when the stories were painful, and laugh when they were hopeful, feeling a fragile connection she hadn't realized she craved. One woman in particular, Felicity, a soft-spoken violinist, had also been left to navigate pregnancy alone. The two bonded quickly. Their shared fears and small victories created a kinship that transcended privilege. With every group session, Emily felt pieces of herself return. Confidence. Hope. One quiet evening, as she dozed on the couch, there was a knock at the door. She opened it cautiously. Marcus stood there holding a small teddy bear. Her instinct was to close the door, but something in his eyes held her still. "May I come in?" he asked gently. Against better judgment, she nodded. He stepped inside, glancing around as if unsure he was still welcome in the home he once shared. His voice faltered as he spoke of co-parenting. He wanted to build a plan that wouldn't place extra stress on her. She watched him choose his words, seeing a vulnerability in his posture she hadn't noticed, perhaps for the first time since before betrayal fractured them. For the first time, Marcus showed concern for the baby. Not appearances, not reputation. He said he regretted the damage he'd done, though he never quite said how much or why. Still, it was closer to sincerity than anything she'd seen from him in months. Emily agreed to let him attend the final ultrasound, but made it clear the divorce remained unchanged. He left quietly after half an hour, leaving the teddy bear on the table. A small gesture. Maybe even a sincere one. At the ultrasound appointment, Marcus joined her in the exam room. Silence loomed until the sonographer turned on the monitor. The steady beat of a tiny heart filled the space. The black and white image shifted on the screen, revealing a delicate profile. Emily's tears came fast. When she glanced over, Marcus was misty-eyed too. In that shared moment, the walls between them felt thinner. A reminder that beneath their fractured marriage, they were still two hearts connected by the same new life. For one fragile moment, they weren't exes. They were simply two people witnessing the start of a life. When the sonographer handed them the printed images, Marcus reached for Emily's hand. She didn't pull away. It was a flicker, a thread of unity. No matter what else they were parents. Outside, Marcus offered her a ride home. Emily hesitated, then agreed. The ride was quiet, but not heavy. It carried the weight of what was lost and the promise of what could be built anew. It felt like a turning point. How they chose to co-parent would shape their child's world. Weeks later, Marcus's legal team submitted revised divorce papers. He conceded to a sizable financial settlement and a structured visitation plan. He acknowledged Emily's full physical custody. At one point, a therapist was recommended, one who specialized in co-parenting dynamics. Emily was skeptical, but Sabrina advised her to give it a chance. Boundaries needed to be clear for everyone's sake. So they sat down together in a discreet office in the Marina district, across from a licensed family therapist. Far from flashing cameras and headlines, emotions surged. Emily let out months' worth of betrayal, while Marcus admitted his failures in allowing their marriage to crumble. There were no magical resolutions, but slowly they began to see each other not as legal opponents, but as co-parents to a soon-to-arrive child who deserved their best. On a snowy morning in late March, Emily went into labor. The contractions hit hard and fast, and she rushed to the hospital with Sabrina by her side. Marcus arrived an hour later, breathless, worry written across his face. Despite everything, Emily allowed him into the delivery room. This moment, she knew, transcended resentment. After an exhausting labor, a sharp, miraculous cry filled the room. A baby girl had arrived. The nurses laid the newborn in Emily's arms. Through tears of exhaustion and overwhelming joy, she looked at her daughter, tiny fingers flailing, eyes squeezed shut. Marcus stood next to her, quietly wiping tears from his own eyes. He reached forward and placed a gentle hand on the baby's head. In that moment, the bitterness of the past year faded into the background, replaced by wonder. While they were no longer husband and wife, they were now forever bonded as parents. Once news of the baby's birth leaked, the media pounced. Headlines speculated about names, weight, even Marcus's involvement. But Emily said nothing, no interviews, no comments. Her daughter's privacy was sacred. Marcus released a short, lawyer-approved statement. "We are thankful for a healthy delivery and ask for privacy as we focus on our daughter's well-being." Aria was nowhere in the picture. No posts, no public comments. She had seemingly vanished, ostracized from the elite social circles that once embraced her. In a world ruled by appearances, Aria had burned every bridge. Whether she felt guilt or regret, no one knew. Emily no longer cared. While Emily recovered in the hospital, Marcus visited daily. The tension that once filled every conversation dissolved into polite exchanges about formula, nap routines, and pediatrician visits. Occasionally, they shared a laugh, a flicker of their former selves. Emily realized that, while the betrayal would never fully disappear, her love for her daughter eclipsed the pain. Her focus narrowed. Diaper changes, lullabies, fleeting quiet nights with a sleeping infant nestled in her arms. Marcus seemed committed to fatherhood. That didn't excuse the past, but it was something. Months passed. Emily dove into motherhood with fierce love and purpose. She also began taking more interior design projects, striking a balance between her career and raising her daughter, whom she named Isabella. Eventually, she moved out of the penthouse. She bought a charming townhouse in Pacific Heights. It was smaller, yes, but it was hers. Friends marveled at her strength and resilience. But Emily knew the scandal hadn't broken her. It had forged her into someone stronger. She cherished those quiet nights with Isabella asleep on her chest, peaceful, whole. On weekends, Marcus would take Isabella to the park or for short visits to his home. Their co-parenting plan, outlined by clear legal terms and supported by therapy, worked smoothly. Sometimes Emily would feel a quiet ache watching Marcus cradle Isabella. The memories of what they could have been drifted into her thoughts. But she always chose peace, for Isabella's sake. They found their rhythm. Marcus, though still emotionally guarded, was visibly devoted to his daughter. He kept a nursery at his home fully stocked with everything Isabella might need. Over time, Emily softened. She began to see a side of Marcus, gentle, present, emotionally invested in his role as a father, that she hadn't seen during their marriage. Though the relationship had been irreparably broken, Their daughter offered them the chance to build a new kind of family, respectful, steady, even if it lacked affection. Occasionally, Emily would hear whispers about Arya, rumors of rehab, of Europe, of exile. One rumor placed Arya in a luxury rehabilitation center in Malibu, allegedly for exhaustion and mental health issues. Another gossip column claimed she was drafting a tell-all memoir about her experiences with high-profile men. Emily never gave such stories much attention. She had won her battle, her dignity was intact, and her daughter's future was safe. One afternoon, Emily stumbled upon an old photograph, captured at the now infamous Gala. It showed Arya mid-sneer, caught mocking Emily's pregnant figure. For a fleeting second, old anger stirred. Then she looked at Isabella, asleep in her bassinet, cheeks flushed with peaceful dreams. Emily sighed. Arya was a chapter closed, a symbol of betrayal, long discarded. Emily had moved forward, grown and triumphed. No bitterness, no revenge. She no longer needed it. Life found rhythm again. Her design business flourished. Clients sought her out for her elegant, understated touch. She launched a YouTube channel offering design tips and DIY projects for mothers working with tight budgets. Her goal was to dismantle the illusion that style belonged only to the wealthy. Her authenticity resonated. A growing audience followed her work, inspired by her creativity and resilience. Isabella grew fast, babbling, then laughing, then wobbling her first steps across the living room floor. Every milestone brought Emily immeasurable joy. She preserved it all in a private scrapbook. Their journey, their bond. Sometimes, standing by Isabella's crib in the quiet of night, Emily would think back to that night. The gala, the spotlight, the confrontation. It felt like a lifetime ago. Nearly a year later, Emily received an invitation to a charity event, this one for a new pediatric wing funded by the Wexler Foundation. She had contributed design work for the children's playroom. At first, she hesitated, but she decided to go, not for prestige or reconciliation, but to affirm her values. The cause mattered, and she wanted to show that she had never lost sight of the bigger picture. The event was modest, focused on doctors and patients, not glitz. Marcus was there, cutting the ceremonial ribbon alongside a city official. He spotted Emily in the crowd and gave a quiet nod. She nodded back. No cameras swarmed them. The scandal had faded from the spotlight. After the ceremony, Marcus approached to thank her for the design work. Their exchange was brief but courteous, a stark contrast to their explosive past. That evening, walking home beneath the city lights, Emily reflected on the transformation. She was no longer the woman who shrank behind her husband's shadow. She was a mother, a professional, a woman who had reclaimed her voice. She had endured betrayal and public scrutiny, but she stood stronger for it. Marcus, in his own way, seemed to be finding clarity. Whether that led to real change or was just another mask, Emily no longer needed to know. Her compass now was Isabella, and no one could shake the peace she had built around their life. The world of red carpets, whispered rumors, and curated smiles, that world was gone. In its place was something more authentic, more peaceful, and far more meaningful. It started with a smile, genuine, unforced. Months after Isabella's birth and the very public collapse of her marriage, Emily felt something shift. Her days were filled with lullabies, golden light filtering through nursery windows, and client consultations that reignited her love for design. Her Pacific Heights townhouse, modest by society standards, was warm, vibrant, and alive with the hum of a new chapter. That's when she met Daniel. He wasn't part of the elite, nor the society pages. He was a freelance photojournalist who had spent years traveling to war zones and refugee camps, capturing stories the world often ignored. They met at a small gallery opening. Emily was consulting on the lighting. Daniel had 3 photographs in the exhibit. Their first real conversation began over a shared appreciation for vintage Polaroid colors. That led to coffee. Then to late-night phone calls. Then to long walks through Pacific Heights, Emily pushing Isabella's stroller beside Daniel. She was cautious. Early on, she told him everything, the scandal, the divorce, the media frenzy. He didn't flinch. Everyone's carrying a past, he said. I'm more interested in how people carry it than in the weight itself. Those words stayed with her. What drew her to Daniel wasn't charm or dramatic gestures. It was his calm presence. He never tried to replace what she'd lost. Never rushed her past her comfort. He respected her pace. And when he looked at Isabella, it wasn't with awkward obligation, but real affection. He brought her carved trinkets from his travels, hand-woven scarves, even a harmonica that made the baby giggle until she hiccuped. Their relationship unfolded slowly, like dawn creeping across a quiet sky, gentle, steady. One weekend, while they picnicked in the park, Isabella gurgled on a blanket between them. Emily laughed deeply, involuntarily. She glanced at Daniel, tossing breadcrumbs to birds with one hand while bouncing Isabella with the other. And she felt it. A joy so quiet, so real, it almost startled her. This wasn't about romance. It was about safety, comfort. The realization that love didn't have to be gilded in wealth or legacy. Sometimes it bloomed from presence and shared values. Emily didn't know what the future held. She didn't rush to define it. But for the first time in a long while, she wasn't waiting for disaster. She allowed herself to hope. And in that hope, her life restarted. The morning light spilled through the tall windows of her townhouse, bathing the nursery in gold. The room was alive with soft clutter, a half-folded blanket, an open picture book, a plush giraffe tipped on its side. In the crib, Isabella slept, her chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm. Emily stood by the window, tea warming her hands. But her gaze was not on the city outside, it was on her reflection in the glass. She saw a woman she didn't fully recognize, but she respected her. A year ago, her name had been everywhere. Headlines, hashtags, whispers at fundraisers, pregnant wife humiliated at Gala, tech mogul served divorce papers live. It had felt like her life was spiraling. But now, wrapped in early light and silence, she saw that moment for what it was. Not her collapse, but her turning point. Her unraveling had been her becoming. She turned from the window and stepped to Isabella's crib, brushed a soft curl from her baby's forehead. The infant sighed, shifting gently toward her mother's touch, and that single moment stirred something in Emily. Not rage, not sadness, but clarity. She didn't think about Arya anymore. The woman who once sneered at her pregnancy in public. She didn't ache over Marcus's betrayal. Those memories had been faced, sorted, and shelved in the past where they belonged. They no longer held power over her. What filled her now was peace, resolve, and the quiet, fierce joy of a life reclaimed. Her business was thriving. Her YouTube channel, once a hesitant project born in grief, had found its voice. Her home echoed with laughter, with love, with a new rhythm, that of a mother and daughter growing into the world together. Some might always call what happened to her a scandal. Some might only remember the night the world watched her fall. But Emily knew better. It wasn't a scandal, it was a rebirth. She pressed a gentle kiss to Isabella's forehead and whispered, "We made it." And in that quiet truth, Emily found everything she ever needed to know. So here we are, dear friends. What a journey it's been. And if you're still here, still watching, then maybe, just maybe, something in Emily's story has stirred something in you too. Maybe it's the strength she found when all felt lost. Maybe it's the quiet power of walking away from what no longer serves you. Or maybe it's just the simple, beautiful truth that healing doesn't always come with applause. It often happens in silence, in small steps, in choosing peace every single day. You know, the Stoics have a saying, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality," Seneca. And Emily's journey shows us just that. The pain was real, yes, but what crushed her most were the imagined futures, the broken hopes, the fear of doing it alone. And yet, when she stepped into that truth, when she embraced the reality, she discovered something else: clarity, resolve, and rebirth. Another quote I love from Epictetus: "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Emily didn't choose betrayal, but she chose how to respond. She didn't collapse under public scandal, she rose. She didn't lash out in bitterness, she moved forward with grace. And in doing so, she taught us all something valuable. So here's my invitation to you. If you found strength, peace, or even just a whisper of truth in this story, give it a like. Share it with someone who might need to hear it today. And hit that subscribe button so we can keep bringing you more stories that inspire, that reflect your courage, your struggles, your humanity. Because the world doesn't need perfect stories. It needs real ones. Like Emily's. Like yours. Until next time, stay strong. And remember, your rebirth might be waiting on the other side of your unraveling.